Welcome to the Socialite podcast, where we empower you with the marketing know-how you need to create the business of your dreams. I'm your host, Steph Taylor, and I'm a marketing nerd, Shiraz lover, and passport stamp collector. Join me as I dive into all things small business marketing and deliver them to you in bite-sized, fluff-free lessons every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Let's get learning.
This is episode 180. This episode is brought to you by the free 28-day Kajabi Hero Challenge. Kajabi is the online course platform that I've been using to build and host pretty much all of my courses, digital products, my membership site, and it's been an absolute game changer in my business. When you join the Kajabi Hero Challenge, they'll walk you through everything you need to know to build your first digital product and to get your first sale within 28 days. I've spoken a little bit on this podcast about the power of digital products and how they can add a passive income stream to your business. And honestly, guys, it's not as hard as you think it is to build your first digital product or your first course. So head to stephtaylor.co/hero to take the free 28-day Kajabi Hero Challenge. Okay, on to the episode. Now, you might have noticed that I haven't been publishing that much fresh podcast content lately, and this has been for two reasons. The first reason is that I hit a little bit of a wall recently with content ideas. I felt so overwhelmed from producing new podcast episodes 3 times a week that I'd literally just run the tank empty. I wasn't feeling inspired and I just wasn't enjoying it, so I knew I needed to take a little bit of a break. And the second reason is what today's podcast is all about. So a few weeks ago, I ran the launch of my brand new Instagram course, Instabam. And I was at a pretty low point in my business before the launch because I felt like I'd just spent this whole year slogging away, doing the work, creating content, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. I had such big hopes for this launch and everything looked like it was going to plan. Like I had so many people signed up for the webinar. People were so excited for it. And I'll give you a proper deep dive into the launch, into behind the scenes of the launch in the next episode. But in this episode, I'm going to share with you the massive fail that happened that kind of derailed my launch and how I dealt with it. So what happened, right? Okay, so if you follow me on Instagram, you probably will have already heard about what happened. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I'm just going to plug that right now. So make sure you head to instagram.com/stephtaylor.co. Anyway, so you might have already heard on Instagram what happened. Basically, when I do launches, I usually do 4 or 5 webinars because I'm limited to 100 people max in the room live. I also have viewers across a bunch of different time zones, so I try to spread them out so that nobody has to get up at 3 a.m. just because they want to watch my masterclasses live. Now, my first webinar was Monday at 10 a.m., and it was the most popular one with, I think, about 350 people registered. I also had a second one on Monday at 5 or 6 p.m. with 70 or so people registered. Anyway, Monday morning comes around and naturally I've got a few pre-webinar jitters. I always get these before I go live and honestly, I don't think they'll ever go away, but I'm okay with that because the jitters help me to bring a lot of energy when I go live. Otherwise, I think I'd probably come across as a bit bored and that's not ideal. Anyway, so 9:30 a.m., I pop into the meeting room that I've booked. I make sure my cup of tea and my glass of water are ready to go. I check my internet connection. I make sure my laptop's plugged in. I do a mic test my camera. Everything's good to go. 10 minutes before go time, I log onto the webinar platform and it pops up with the usual message saying, please wait, preparing your live room. And it just didn't move. It stayed on this page for at least half an hour. And I tried contacting customer support, but alas, they're in the US and it was outside of business hours. Meanwhile, I had my inbox open in another tab and I could just see all of these emails coming through from people who'd registered, who'd shown up live, and they thought something was wrong with their internet connection or their computer and they were just really worried. So I got really flustered. As soon as I realized that the webinar wasn't going to go ahead, I basically went into panic mode and I started replying to everyone who had emailed me. until I remembered that this actually wasn't the quickest way to get in touch with everyone who was trying to attend. Isn't it funny how when we go into panic mode, our brain sometimes just forgets the most obvious solution? Anyway, so I sent an email to everyone who had registered for that morning's webinar. And then I very, very quickly recorded what was probably the most rushed, flustered, one-person webinar recording ever made and sent it out to everyone who'd registered. But this recording just didn't do the webinar any justice. And honestly, I was devastated. I sat at my desk in my co-working space pretty much in tears. So I went home, I poured myself a massive glass of wine, and I had a big, ugly cry in bed while I was drinking wine in bed. I even started to look for a job because I felt like I couldn't handle the ups and downs of running a business anymore. Because if you're a business owner, you'll know what it's like, right? When things are good, they're great. But when they're bad, they're really, really bad. Shout out to the amazing Anita from WordFetti, who gave me a call and basically talked me off the ledge and helped me to figure out what my next steps for that day would be. Because otherwise I would have just sat in bed, frozen with indecision, no idea what to do. Anyway, at this stage, customer support still hadn't come back online, and I had no idea whether the 5 p.m. webinar for that day would be able to go ahead. So I had to make the call as to whether I would cancel the webinar or risk more people showing up live and not being able to attend. So I decided to cancel it. Anita's advice to me was this: tell the people who registered exactly what happened and paint the picture with details so they know exactly what it was like for you, how you felt when you logged onto that webinar platform and it crashed. And that's exactly what I did. And I think most people were quite understanding. Naturally, some were annoyed because they'd set aside the time in their day, they'd put their kids to bed early, whatever. But on the whole, most people were quite understanding, which I'm very appreciative about. Okay, so what happened next? Now, obviously, this whole situation put a bit of a damper on the whole launch, and I didn't even come close to hitting my revenue target for the launch, which wasn't ideal. But anyway, these things happen. And on the flip side, it was a really good reminder that when things go wrong in your business, rather than freaking out and drinking wine in bed, just focus on taking that next step. I mean, maybe have that glass of wine just to just to take the edge off, but then take that next step and the next and the next, and suddenly it doesn't all seem so bad anymore. It seems a little bit more doable. This whole situation was a really big contributing factor to the big business rut that I've just come out of, and I'll chat a bit more about this in a future episode because it really wasn't a fun place to be, and this has probably been my most challenging one so far. Anyway, next episode, I'll be giving you a bit of a behind the scenes of how I structured my launch and how I managed to get over 900 people registered for my launch webinars. So I will see you back here for that. That's it for this episode. If you're enjoying this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could please leave a quick rating and a review in Apple Podcasts, and make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes released every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's it, guys. Catch you next time.